I've heard it over and over and over again. Today's Jews are not really Jews. Today's Jews are just Ashkenazi. They're converts of the Khazar kingdom. They're European. They're not really Jews. And the real Jews are either Africans or the real Jews are Christians because God's done with natural Israel. Well, what is this based on? Some of it's based on just the latest misinformation and internet myths and things like that. Some of it's based on good research that traces back Jewish origins and recognizes that there's been Jewish intermarriage over the centuries. That's why we come in so many different colors and shapes and forms. But this idea that today's Jews are not really Jews, or that even if Ashkenazi Jews or other Jews are ethnically Jewish, that they're not Jews in God's sight, it's based on a misreading of Romans chapter 9, verse 6. Paul is writing in Romans, and look at what he says in Romans chapter 9, verse 6. But it is not as though the word of God has failed, for not all who are descended from Israel belong to Israel. Not all who are of Israel are Israel. What was the point that Paul was making? He spoke from Romans 9, 1 to 5 of the anguish that he carried in his heart, the constant pain and anguish that he carried in his heart for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, to whom the promises of God remain. He says, theirs are, not were, but theirs are the promises, all right? But he says, well, it's not as though the word of God failed because the Messiah came and the promised nation didn't follow. Does that mean the word of God failed because God made these promises to Israel? And his first response is, no, not everyone descended from Israel is Israel. He's not talking about the church as a whole. He's not talking about the Gentile world. He's not talking about everyone else. He's saying that there is a remnant within the nation, just as he says in Romans 11:1. He responds to that again, points out, hey, I'm an Israelite. I'm part of the remnant. So he's saying within the nation, there is an Israel within Israel, an Israel within Israel that has received the Messiah, to whom the promises have come. He's not calling Gentiles the people of Israel. In fact, later on in Romans 11, he says, I'm writing to you Gentiles to help provoke Israel to believe. But then he goes on, and 10 times after he says not all Israel is Israel, 10 times he uses the word Israel. Just check it out for yourself in Romans 9, 10, 11. And every time Israel means the nation as a whole, the nation as a whole, the nation as a whole. Romans 11:25, the nation as a whole, which is hardened in part for now, will ultimately turn. And so Romans 11:26, all Israel will be saved. Yes, there will be a national turning of the Jewish people to Jesus, Yeshua, the Messiah. It is written.